interest in this paper. The title of this paper is Goal Consensus, Subordinates Prior Performance, and Supervisors Resource Allocation Preference. My name is Nayin Liu. I come from National Central University. The co-authors in this paper include Shunlian Zhu from National Taipei University and Sunlian Liu from National Taiwan University. So, the main interest of this study is try to understand factors that could influence a supervisor's resource allocation preference. So we analyze whether these preferences are affected by first, level of goal consensus between supervisors and their subordinates, and second, whether subordinates' prior performance could also be one factor that affect supervisors' resource allocation preference. We then further examine whether subordinates' prior performance could act as the moderator and affect the relationship between goal consensus and subordinates' resource allocation preference. From the empirical result, we found that a higher goal consensus between branch and regional managers' priorities make the regional managers more likely to allocate advertising funding to the branch manager's office. We also found that regional managers is more likely to distribute senior salespersons to branch managers who have better prior sales performance. However, we do not find a statistically significant association between the interaction of goal consensus and branch offices' prior sales performance and resource allocation preference. So this insignificant empirical finding may suggest that although these two factors may exist simultaneously, but they play different and independent role in affecting a regional manager's resource allocation decision. So this study contributes to literature in two ways. First, we contribute to literature by taking a broader perspective on supervisors' behavior toward supervisor and subordinates goal consensus, and by showing that supervisor and subordinates goal consensus can affect the former's resource allocation preference. We also contribute to literature by shedding light on factors that can affect supervisors' resource allocation preference. So our research site is the largest realty company in Taiwan. So at the time of this study, the company had 474 branch offices in Taiwan and was expanding its overseas operation in China and Japan as well. So as the largest realty company in Taiwan, the company tried to maintain its competitive advantage. So the company set 4 major goals to ensure its leading position. The first one is expanding market share and improving financial performance, and the second one is consumer-focused quality management. The third one is team management, and the final one is implementation of the company's ideology. So the case company's top management communicate these 4 goals to regional managers and allow them to design their goal priorities in response to the change in the market. And the regional manager at the same time communicate their goal priority to branch office at a monthly meeting. However, the branch managers may adjust their priorities according to a different circumstance surrounding their branch office. So in this situation, there is a chance that the goal priorities between regional managers and branch managers could be different. So let's move to the literature review and hypothesis development. Stephen et al. 1985 point out that organization position largely determines the information and resources available to members. Therefore, formal position gives some members or actors a better or great deal more leverage in bargaining situation than others. Supervisors, therefore, are expected to have greater opportunity to control the availability of resources between subordinates. So because supervisors have their own preference concerning certain tasks, and such preference could be driven by supervisors overemphasizing the need to provide input to tasks they prefer. So this leads to our first hypothesis. the greater the degree of goal consensus, the more resources received by the branch manager's office, and vice versa. However, from prior study, we also know that allocators' distributive decisions are context sensitive, which means that there are only few conditions where allocators could use one single distributive rule to distribute their resource. So because regional managers, so therefore we assume that a regional manager's allocation preference may be affected not only by its own preference, but also by other factors. So from the interview with the case company, we know that regional managers in our case company rely on branch managers to complete their own tasks, and individual performers counts toward overperformers to branch office within their regions. So therefore, we know that the relationship between branch managers and regional manager are task-directed, and this task-directed relationship may let regional managers to use distributive rules that reflect the productivity of the branch managers, which therefore leads our second hypothesis is that the better the prior sales performance of a branch manager's office, the more likely that the office receive resources and vice versa. And because we know that allocators may not use a single principle to distribute resources, and prior literature also indicate that the pursuit of one principle may be coincide or conflict with pursuit of another principle. And because we assume that both goal consensus and subordinate prior performance are important antecedents that could affect allocator's preference for distributing resources. Therefore, we try to understand whether situational factors reinforce the influence of self-interest factors on supervisors' allocation preference, which therefore leads to our third hypothesis. The prior sales performance of a branch office reinforce the relationship between the degree of goal consensus and the resource received by the office. We collect data or the survey conducted between January 1st, 2017 to June 30, 2017. We also collect the case company's monthly financial information and all data related to the branch office from the same period of time in order to match them with the survey data. We measure regional managers' resource allocation preference by measuring the unexpected proportion of resources in each branch office. So we regress each branch office monthly ratio of number of senior sales agents and allocated advertising funding on key branch-specific characteristic variables. A higher value residual terms indicates that more unexpected resources are given to the branch office and vice versa. And we measure the goal consensus between regional and branch managers by measuring how consistently a regional and branch managers prioritize the four goals that we just mentioned in previous slide. So we use the analytic hierarchy process, also known AHP approach, developed by SATI 2000 and developed a ratio scale from a pairwise comparison to obtain the priorities of both regional and branch managers. And finally, we measure branch office prior performance by using a dummy variable which equals to 1 if the branch office prior month of sales revenue was ranked in the top 25% of the sales revenue within the same region and month and 0 otherwise. So this is a very preliminary descriptive statistic from our data. So from this descriptive statistic, we can see that on average, 25% of the sales agents in our branch office is senior sales agent, and around 74% of regional and branch managers have the same goal, agree on the same goal priorities. So this is our regression result. As I just mentioned in the introduction slide, that we found that the higher level of goal consensus between regional and branch managers, the more likely the branch office will have more advertising funding, and the better the prior performance of the branch office, the more likely the regional managers will distribute more senior sales agents to that branch office. However, we do not found the moderate effect of branch office prior performance on the goal consensus and resource allocation relations. So the conclusion part. The empirical result of this study suggests that regional managers' resource allocation preference vary with the level of goal consensus and with the subordinates' prior performance. So this study highlights the fact that resource allocation decision among subordinates depends on supervisors' preference and interest. Thank you for your listening and interest in this paper. Thank you.